Hello and welcome to Moneylife News and Views. I am Debashis Basu. Former Prime Minister Dr Manmohan Singh has been ridiculed, as we know, for his silence on everything that was happening in the country under his watch. From a series of corruption scandals like the Commonwealth Games, Air India, allocation of telecom spectrum, coal, iron, etc., to policy paralysis, land grabs under SEZ, to the mishandling of egregious cases like the rape case of Nirbhaya, and so on. His silence was so loud that Mr. Narendra Modi, during the run-up to the elections of 2014, called him Manmohan Singh. Well, it is now PM Modi's turn to be quiet. And Dr. Singh has spoken out rather than that written a piece in Hindu, hitting hard at Modi's economic performance. Nominal GDP growth at 15-year low, household consumption at a 4-decade low, unemployment at a 45-year high, bad loans of banks at an all-time high, growth in electricity generation at a 15-year low, and so on. While these facts about the Modi government's economic performance are true, Dr. Singh perhaps has forgotten the record of various governments that he has headed, he has been part of, either as a finance minister or as a prime minister. Dr. Singh says this about the current government, that mutual trust and self-confidence are the bedrock of social transactions, which in turn foster economic growth. And right now, our social fabric of trust and confidence is torn. Industrialists live in fear of harassment by government authorities. Bankers are reluctant to make new loans for fear of retribution. Entrepreneurs are hesitant to put up new projects. Technology startups seem to live under the shadow of constant surveillance and deep suspicion, while policymakers are scared to speak the truth or engage in intellectually honest policy discussions. Fear and distrust reduce economic transactions, which lead to an economic slowdown, which is exactly what seems to have happened according to Dr. Singh. Now, while these things are partly true, they are highly exaggerated. In fact, given what India has gone through under previous regimes, most notably under Congress in 91-96, when Dr. Singh was the finance minister, and again in 2004 to 14 when he was the prime minister, Dr. Singh's arguments have two major problems. One, he picks facts selectively, which is called a selection bias, and he highlights only the recent events, forgetting the previous events, which is called recency bias. Now, firstly, Indian citizens and businessmen have always been at the mercy of the state, which harasses us through its hundreds of different arms. Well, we all thought that the Modi government would change this, but it hasn't. But it hasn't done anything so completely different than has been done before. It's not that the governments have been friendly to people and its citizens and businessmen, the wealth creators. At Moneylife, we coined the term taxtortion way back in 2010 when Dr. Singh was a prime minister. The Draconian Companies Act was drawn up in 2013 under Dr. Singh. Remember retrospective amendments and general anti-avoidance rules of the Congress regime? These are not great examples of trust and confidence. These were examples of repression, of harassment, of exactly the kind that Dr. Singh accuses the Modi government of. Secondly, correlation is not causation. People won't know, but surely Dr. Singh would, that economic consequences come with a lag. So today's economic conditions relate to action taken years ago. We are paying the price today not only of Modi government's follies, but of misgovernance of the previous regime. Now, nowhere is this obvious than in case of public sector banks. The single biggest reason for current economic sluggishness is a failure to stop corrupt lending by public sector banks on a mind-numbing scale, as reflected in over 10 lakh crores of bad loans. Perhaps the number is much larger. I cannot imagine a bigger reason than this horrific loot that has sapped liquidity from the system, misallocated resources on a gigantic scale, and forced the government to raise more and more resources from the most productive section of the population, which is private businesses and households. And those responsible for this plunder by crony capitalists and bankers our successive finance ministers and prime minister of the previous regime, successive governors of the Reserve Bank of India. It's not really fair to blame Mr. Modi for this. In fact, by all accounts, the Prime Minister Modi is not letting the defaulters off the hook as they were habituated to in the past. Under Congress, they would have got more money from the same banks and kept control over their businesses through ubiquitous power brokers in Delhi. Not under Mr. Modi. They're losing their businesses. Policy prescription is another issue. Dr. Singh thinks India can revive private investment by inspiring trust and confidence in the economic participants of our society. Trust and confidence by themselves do not lead to economic growth. Competition, transparency, fair and simple rules of entry and exit, these are the things that do. And I cannot think of one step Dr. Singh's government has taken to further this kind of a regime. It is easy to forget that in the 1990s, when he was the finance minister, India went through a security scam, when households were looted by flimsy public issues in an era of deregulated free pricing without adequate safeguards, multiple other financial scams from plantation companies to leasing companies. The state, meanwhile, was looted through corrupt lending practices of public sector banks, and there was colossal failures of governance in telecom licensing, Enron, and other private sector power projects. In all cases, crony capitalism was the rule. The consequences of such rampant financial buccaneering was that inflation hit double digits under a famous economist. Because of such gross mismanagement, not liberalization for which Dr. Singh gets credit, the economy went into a deep slump from which it took 6 years to recover. A new law for bad loans had to be enacted, which also proved ineffective, and in fact, public sector banks continued to lend exactly the way they were lending. In 2004 to 14 period, mismanagement was played out on a larger scale, but got papered over because we benefited from an unprecedented global resource and liquidity boom caused by China. That was our big fortune. It's not something that the Congress government created. This is a big misconception that the 2004 to 14 period was a boom caused by economic policies. It was nothing of that kind. It was all external favorable circumstances. Instead of competition, in fact, we had crony capitalism. Instead of transparency, we had opaque processes. Instead of fair and simple rules, we got more and more complicated ones. In fact, large-scale corruption and an air of despondency is the reason people voted the Congress regime from power, as we squandered away a boom that comes once in a lifetime. Dr. Singh's criticism hides more about Congress's failures than they expose the flaws of the current regime. Thanks for watching.